Coach locked the locker room. We found the spare key. Remember that metallic taste of pure panic? That's what hit me right after the click. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home, sealing us inside the boys' varsity locker room at 7:20 p.m. Exactly 7:20. I know because I just glanced at the big digital clock above Coach Miller's office door, the one perpetually stuck on the wrong time. But for some reason, tonight it was accurate. Sweat, old linoleum, and a faint whiff of chlorine from the adjoining pool. That was the smell of our prison. He did it, Marcus whispered, his voice thin, cracking. He actually locked us in. Our game against Northwood High had been a disaster, a 20-point loss, the kind that made Coach Miller's face turn that particular shade of puce, the one that usually preceded a 2-hour lecture on heart and grit and disappointment. But tonight was different. Tonight, after screaming himself hoarse about our pathetic lack of effort, he'd just stormed out, slamming the main door and locking it from the outside. No warning, no I'll be back, just the definitive chilling thunk of the lock. There was a moment, maybe 5 minutes, where we just stared at each other, 17 sets of eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and fear. Then the practical minds kicked in. Okay, so what's the plan? Asked Jamal, always the most level-headed. Scream? Suggested Noah, a freshman, his voice barely above a squeak. No one's gonna hear us, Marcus countered, already halfway to the main entrance of the gym, which was visible through the small, grimy window of the locker room door. We watched him bang on it, yelling, but the gym was empty, the lights already dimmed. It was Saturday night, after all. The janitorial staff usually only did a quick sweep, and they wouldn't be near the locker rooms for another hour or two, if at all. My gaze drifted to the emergency exit sign, above the fire alarm pull station. What about the fire alarm? I asked, pointing. Is that a good idea? Liam mumbled, already walking towards it. We'd get suspended for sure, Jamal warned. Using the alarm for a non-fire emergency? That's like a cardinal sin in the student handbook, Article 5, subsection A, misuse of emergency equipment. We all knew Coach Miller would spin it to make us look like delinquents, further justifying his punishment. Suddenly, a flicker of memory. I'd seen Coach Miller, months ago, fumbling with his keys, then pulling something small and metallic from behind, the first aid cabinet near the showers. He'd seemed annoyed, like he'd misplaced it. He'd then replaced it, almost secretively. Was it a spare key? It was a long shot, but what else did we have? The first aid cabinet was an old, dented metal box, bolted to the wall, slightly loose. It had a white cross on it, faded and peeling. Hey, I said, a new spark of hope in my voice. Remember a few months back, Coach Miller was messing with the first aid cabinet? Like he pulled something out from behind it? Marcus looked at me, a wrinkle forming between his eyebrows. Yeah, I think I do. He swore under his breath. He never uses the first aid cabinet, Liam added. Mr. Henderson from the training room usually handles all that stuff. It was a tiny detail, easily forgotten, but now it felt like a beacon. The risk of being caught by Coach Miller was immense, but the risk of being stuck here all night, missing my mom's curfew, missing my history paper deadline, felt even worse. The floor was cold under my bare feet. The smell of damp towels and cheap disinfectant was almost suffocating. The air felt heavy, pressing in on us. We had to try something, anything. The decision was unspoken. We needed to be stealthy. Okay, everyone, act natural, Jamal instructed, as if someone was watching us through a two-way mirror. Spread out, look like you're just messing around. The idea was to create a diversion, while I, being the smallest and most agile, would investigate the cabinet. Marcus started dribbling an imaginary basketball, making faint thwack-thwack noises with his hands on his thighs. Liam pretended to tie his shoelaces, meticulously, for the third time. I walked towards the showers, trying to appear casual, my heart pounding against my ribs. The cabinet was old, with a faint scuff mark on the wall directly beneath it, a dark streak against the pale green paint, suggesting something had been dragged there repeatedly. It was mounted high enough that I had to stretch to reach the top. My fingers grazed the dusty top, then the sides. Nothing. But then, as I leaned against it, I felt a slight give. The entire cabinet wasn't firmly attached to the wall. It wobbled slightly if you pushed on its lower right corner. This wasn't a structural issue. It felt deliberate. A faint metallic clang. Did you hear that? Noah whispered, his eyes wide. Just the pipes, I lied, my voice a bit shaky. I pushed again, harder this time, focusing on the corner. There was a faint creaking sound, the kind of noise old metal makes. I pressed my ear against the wall, trying to discern anything. The sound of my own breath was amplified. My fingers explored the gap between the cabinet and the wall. It was tight, barely a centimeter, but enough for something flat. Guys, I whispered, turning my head slightly. I think there's something back here. Marcus was already looking, his earlier fear now replaced by a focused intensity. Liam edged closer. The smell of damp concrete was strong now, mixed with the sharp tang of antiseptic from inside the cabinet itself. My fingers found something. It was small, cold, and made of metal. Not a key, not yet. It felt like a small flat box. My heart leaped. What if it was just a spare box of bandages? What if it was a trap? What if Coach Miller had put it there precisely to trick us? To see if we'd try to escape? The paranoia was setting in, thick and heavy. I carefully, slowly pulled. The metal box was flat, about the size of a deck of cards. It slid out with a soft shing sound, the metal scraping against the concrete wall. I clutched it, my palm sweaty. It was a standard rectangular metal box, plain gray, with a small, barely visible inscription on its side. Emergency use only, master key. My breath caught. A master key. Not just a spare, but something that could open any door in this facility. This was much bigger than just getting out of the locker room. This was a direct, undeniable defiance of Coach Miller's actions, using his own hidden tools against him. The weight of it in my hand felt enormous, not just physically, but morally. We were about to cross a line, not just from trapped students to free ones, but from passive victims to active participants in our own liberation. And the implications of that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. The clock above the door now read 7:58 p.m. My mom would be calling soon. We were running out of time, and the air in the locker room felt thinner with every passing second. The box was cold and heavy in my hand. "A master key," I mouthed, showing it to Marcus. His eyes widened. "No way." Liam grabbed it, turning it over in his hands. "It's got master key written on it," he confirmed, reading the faded inscription. "Coach must use this when he needs to access other parts of the building after hours. He probably just stashes it here instead of walking all the way back to the main office." It made sense. Coach Miller was notoriously lazy when it came to following proper procedure. We exchanged glances. This wasn't just about unlocking the door. This was about retrieving a piece of school property he'd hidden, violating yet another, probably less formal, but still important, policy about secure keys. The consequences for us, if caught, could be severe. Suspension, maybe even expulsion, definitely losing any chance at a scholarship. But staying locked in? That wasn't an option. "So who's opening the door?" Liam asked, handing the small box back to me. "You found it," Marcus said, shrugging. My hands were shaking slightly. My finger traced the rough edge of the key inside the box. It was a single, long, silvery key, much more complex than a standard locker key. It gleamed faintly under the dim light. I took a deep breath. "Okay," I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Everyone stay calm." We open the door, we walk out, we don't draw attention. Easier said than done. The locker room door was about 20 feet away from where we stood. Every step felt like walking a tightrope. I could almost hear Coach Miller's bellowing voice, his face red if he somehow found out. The image of him, standing over us, threatening our futures, made my stomach churn. I slid the key out of the box. It was surprisingly heavy, cold against my palm. As I walked towards the door, I made sure my back was to the others, hiding the key. Even though we were all in this together, a part of me felt exposed, vulnerable. This was my risk, my discovery, and now my responsibility. The main door of the locker room had a heavy-duty deadbolt, the kind with a thick, satisfying clunk when it engages. There was also a standard doorknob lock. I tried the master key in the deadbolt first. It slid in smoothly, almost too easily. A deep breath. I turned it slowly, clockwise. A soft click. Not the loud thunk of the deadbolt retracting, but a more subtle, internal mechanism. My heart hammered. I pulled the key out and tried the doorknob lock. Again, it slid in, turned, and clicked. I pressed down on the handle. It moved. The door was unlocked. The relief that washed over me was immediate and overwhelming, like a dam breaking. I pushed the door open just a crack, peering out into the dimly lit gym. It was deserted, silent except for the distant hum of the ventilation system. The air outside felt cooler, fresher, even though it was still just the inside of a school gym. "We're out," I whispered, turning back to the others. 17 faces, previously etched with worry, now broke into wide grins. "Dude, you're a legend," Noah breathed, already moving towards the door. But Jamal, ever cautious, held up a hand. "Wait, we need to be smart about this. We can't just run out like a stampede. We need to leave no trace. Did anyone touch anything?" Everyone shook their heads. "Okay," Jamal continued. "We open the door, walk out one by one, quiet as possible. We put the key back exactly where we found it. No one says a word about this to anyone, not until we figure out what we're going to do." The collective nods indicated agreement. We were free, but this was only the first step. The real challenge lay ahead, dealing with Coach Miller. The locker room clock now read 8:11 p.m. My mom would be calling any minute. I quietly re-entered the locker room to replace the master key. I carefully slid the box back behind the first aid cabinet, making sure it was exactly as I'd found it. The cabinet wobbled slightly as I pushed it into place. I scanned the room one last time. Nothing seemed out of place. The air still hung heavy with the scent of old sweat and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights still hummed. It was as if our brief imprisonment had never happened. We filed out one by one into the deserted gym. The vast space, usually filled with the echo of bouncing balls and squeaking sneakers, was eerily quiet. Our footsteps seemed to boom in the silence. We walked quickly, skirting the center court, heading straight for the side exit that led to the parking lot. My phone buzzed again. A call from my mom. My stomach tightened. It was 8:15 p.m. I quickly texted her. "On my way out of practice now. Long talk with coach. Be home soon." A partial truth. I couldn't tell her everything, not yet, not without understanding the full implications. As we reached the glass doors leading outside, the cold night air hit us. A welcome shock after the stale locker room. A few cars were still in the parking lot. Mostly other students doing late-night study sessions in the library, or the few teachers who stayed late. We split up, melting into the shadows, each heading to our own cars or waiting for rides. "What are we going to do about him?" Marcus asked, his voice low as we walked towards our cars, parked side by side. "We can't let him get away with this." Liam nodded, his face grim in the faint glow of the parking lot lights. "He does stuff like this all the time, just never this extreme. Remember last year when he made us run sprints in the rain for an hour after we lost to Westbrook? Said it would build character. That wasn't against the rules, technically. But locking us in? That was different. That was dangerous. It crossed a line." My phone buzzed with a message from Jamal. "Group chat on Discord in 10. We need to talk." The crisis was averted, but the confrontation was just beginning. The freedom felt less like a victory and more like the beginning of a whole new nightmare. The Discord call started promptly at 8:25 p.m. 7 of us joined, the core of the team, the ones who had been there when the door clicked shut. The others were either too shaken or too afraid to speak up. Okay, Jamal's voice crackled through the headset. First, everyone calm down. Second, no one tells their parents anything yet. Not until we have a plan. My mom had texted again. Everything okay? You sound off. I'd replied, yeah, just tired. The lie felt heavy. He locked us in for over an hour, Liam stated, his voice tight with anger. That's not just a long talk. That's illegal, isn't it? Marcus chimed in. My dad's a lawyer. He'd freak out if he knew. He'd sue the school. We can't just tell our parents, I argued. Coach Miller has a lot of pull with the principal. He could try to say we were disruptive, that we deserved it, that we were trying to trash the locker room or something. He'd twist it. And what about scholarships? He could badmouth us to recruiters. So what's the evidence? Marcus asked. Just us? Our word against his? He always takes his keys with him, I said, thinking aloud. He's super particular about them. He wears them on a lanyard around his neck. But we found the spare. Does that count as evidence? It proves he had a way to unlock it, Jamal noted, and chose not to. That's good, but we need more. Does anyone have a timestamp from when he left? I glanced at the clock above his door, I offered. It was 7:20 p.m. When he slammed it shut. I saw it. It was accurate tonight. And we got out at 8:15, Liam said. We can check our phone logs for texts sent after we got out, showing we were texting outside the locker room. I sent my mom a text at 8:15, I confirmed. And I sent my girlfriend one at 8:17, Marcus added. These were small details, but they could build a timeline. Okay, Jamal said. We need to present a united front. No wavering. We all tell the same story, every detail consistent. And we have to tell someone who will actually listen. Not just the principal, maybe the athletic director, Mr. Davies. He's usually pretty fair. Mr. Davies. He was a good guy, retired Marine, by the book. He didn't like drama, but he also didn't tolerate injustice. This felt like the best option. What if Coach Miller tries to scare us? Noah asked, his voice still shaky. He'll deny everything, I said, a cold certainty settling in my gut. He'll say we're lying, that we're fabricating stories because we lost the game. He'll try to turn it around on us. He would. That was his playbook. He always found a way to make us feel responsible for his own bad behavior. The conversation dragged on for another 30 minutes, outlining strategies, rehearsing our story, trying to anticipate Coach Miller's moves. My mom called again at 9:15 p.m. Seriously, are you okay? You never take this long. I mumbled something about a team meeting running late. The guilt was eating at me, but I knew I had to stick to the plan. This was bigger than just me. This was for all of us. This was for every student who had ever been subjected to Coach Miller's unchecked power. We made a pact. Tomorrow morning, first thing, we would go to Mr. Davies. At 9:45 a.m., we walked into the school building. The main office was usually deserted on a Sunday, but we had arranged for Mr. Davies to meet us. The smell of floor wax and disinfectant hung in the air, a sterile, unsettling scent. His door was ajar. He looked up from his desk, his face unreadable. Come in, gentlemen, he said, gesturing to the chairs. Jamal said you had something important to discuss. We sat down, a nervous huddle. Jamal, as our de facto leader, took the lead. He laid out the facts, calmly, concisely. He described the game, Coach Miller's temper, the click of the lock, the hour we spent trapped, the discovery of the master key. He didn't accuse, he just stated what happened. At 7:20 p.m. Yesterday, Coach Miller locked us inside the locker room. We were there until 8:15 p.m. when we found and used a hidden master key to exit. We understand that, sir, Jamal said, his voice unwavering. But what he did was wrong. It was dangerous, and it was against school policy. What if there had been a fire? What if someone had had a medical emergency? We were locked in. Mr. Davies nodded slowly, still twirling his pen. He opened a drawer and pulled out a binder labeled Staff Conduct, Employee Handbook. He flipped through it, finding a specific section. Article 6, Professional Conduct and Respect for Students, he read aloud. Staff members shall at all times maintain a safe and respectful environment for students, avoiding any actions that could be construed as intimidation, harassment, or unlawful confinement. He closed the binder with a soft thud. This falls squarely under unlawful confinement, and it's a serious offense. A wave of relief washed over me. He was listening. He was taking us seriously. This wasn't just going to be dismissed. We also have the detail about the master key, sir, I added, looking at Jamal, who nodded. Coach Miller kept a master key hidden behind the first aid cabinet in the locker room. That's how we got out. Mr. Davies' eyebrows shot up. A master key? Hidden? That's a significant security breach. Keys are supposed to be signed out from the main office, or kept in a secure location. This was a new layer to the problem, one that reflected poorly on Coach Miller's judgment and adherence to protocol. Did you replace it? He asked. Yes, sir, I confirmed. Exactly as we found it. He sighed again, even heavier this time. Okay, this is going to require a formal investigation. I'll need to speak with Coach Miller, obviously, and I'll need to review security footage from the gym and locker room area for yesterday evening. My heart hammered. Security footage. That could either prove everything or nothing. There's a camera in the main gym hallway near the locker room entrance, Liam pointed out, and another one in the hallway leading to the pool, which has a partial view of our locker room door. Thank you, Liam, Mr. Davies said, making a note. I'll also need individual statements from each of you, in writing. He handed us each a blank form. Be as detailed as possible. Include everything you remember. Times, specific quotes, who was present, what you did. He looked at us, his gaze firm but not unkind. Gentlemen, I understand this is difficult, but you've done the right thing by coming forward. Rest assured, this will be handled thoroughly and fairly. As we walked out of his office, I felt a strange mix of fear and triumph. We had put the ball in motion. The first step was done. But the real confrontation, the one with Coach Miller, was still to come. What if the security footage wasn't clear? What if he denied everything? What if his 20 years of service outweighed our 17 testimonies? The questions swirled in my head, a relentless storm. The quiet of the empty school building felt less peaceful now, more like the calm before a much bigger storm. The next few days were a blur of interviews and anxieties. Mr. Davies pulled us out of classes one by one to give our formal statements. We repeated the story, meticulously, sticking to the details. 7:20 p.m., the click of the lock, the cold key, 8:15 p.m. exit. Each time, it felt like reliving the moment. I focused on the facts, keeping my emotions in check. On Tuesday, Coach Miller was conspicuously absent from practice. Mr. Davies filled in, running a low-key drill, but the tension in the gym was palpable. Everyone knew something was up. Rumors were already circulating amongst the wider team. Had he quit? Was he fired? No one dared ask. On Wednesday, Mr. Davies called another meeting, this time with our parents present, along with the school principal, Ms. Albright. The room felt oppressively formal. My mom sat beside me, her hand occasionally squeezing my arm, a silent reassurance. Ms. Albright, a stern woman in her 50s, started by thanking us for coming. "We have reviewed the statements from the students," she began, her voice crisp and professional. "And we have reviewed the security footage." My breath hitched. This was the moment. The footage from Channel 3 covering the gym entrance and the locker room hallway at 20:00 hours and 25 seconds, that is 8 p.m. and 25 seconds, clearly shows Coach Miller exiting the locker room, making a distinct locking motion with his hand on the door, and then walking away. It does not show him re-entering. She paused, letting the information sink in. Furthermore, the footage shows no one else entering or exiting the locker room until 20:15 hours and 08 seconds, 8:15 p.m. and 8 seconds, when students began to emerge. This corroborates the students' timeline. A collective sigh of relief, audible even in the tense room, swept through our group. The video evidence was crucial. It wasn't just our word against his. We also investigated the matter of the master key, Ms. Albright continued, her gaze unwavering. Coach Miller was questioned. He admitted to locking the team in, stating it was a disciplinary measure to teach them a lesson about teamwork and accountability. He denies any malicious intent and claims he intended to return after a short period, though he could not provide a specific time. She rolled her eyes slightly at the short period claim. He also admitted to keeping a master key hidden behind the first aid cabinet, claiming it was for convenience, and that he sometimes forgot his main set of keys. This is a severe violation of school security protocols, as well as a direct contradiction of Employee Code of Conduct, Article 6, regarding professional conduct and student safety. The words hit like a hammer. It was all coming together. Coach Miller's denial was crumbling. My mom squeezed my arm tighter. Ms. Albright looked directly at our parents. Given the severity of these violations, unlawful confinement, disregard for student safety, and a significant security breach involving school property, the school administration has made a decision. The room was silent. You could hear a pin drop. Effective immediately, Coach Miller's employment with Northwood High School has been terminated. The words hung in the air, potent and final. A murmur went through the room. Some parents exchanged relieved glances. The shock was immediate, but so was a deep sense of justice. It felt unreal. 20 years of coaching, just gone. But it was fair. He had abused his power, and he had been held accountable. 6 months later, a lot had changed. We got a new coach, Coach Jensen. He was younger, calmer, and genuinely cared about us as people, not just as athletes. Practices were still tough, but they were never punitive or demeaning. He even had a strict policy: always check the locker room before locking up, no matter what. There was a new, brightly colored sign on the locker room door, detailing emergency procedures, and a number to call the school security office directly. The revised practice schedule was posted on the team's bulletin board, meticulously organized and always adhered to. My scholarship prospects were unaffected. In fact, Mr. Davies even wrote a letter of recommendation for me, praising my courage and integrity. I learned that speaking up, even when terrified, can make a difference. That collective action, when done ethically and with facts, has immense power. That trusting your gut feeling when something is wrong is crucial. And that even when someone in power seems untouchable, the truth, when brought to light, can prevail.